Hello, we are glad to see you. If you are new to this session, we're happy to welcome you. If you've been watching us before this, we're glad to welcome you back. I'm Ms. Shepherd, and this today is the mindfulness session. So mindfulness is a way of being in the world. It is not a religious, connected to a religious practice. Can be used by people without any religious traditions, by people in any array of religious traditions. It's a way of relating to our experience moment by moment. So this is the mindfulness session. Today we are recording, I don't know when you'll hear it, but we are recording it on Monday, September the 21st. And we're really happy to be here. Let me have my colleague introduce himself as well.
And hello, I'm Mr. Keogh. I've been working with Ms. Shepherd for years, coming into prisons. We've come in to face-to-face groups in various places around southern Wisconsin. And now we can't, but at least we can come in one direction, talking with you, and glad to have this opportunity to introduce myself. So stay tuned. It's a fun session coming up.
Wonderful. That's good. I hope it is fun. Fun in an interesting way. Fun in a way of not high stimulation, but fun because it opens the heart and makes you feel a little bit lighter. So it's the kind of fun I like.
Right.
It's a funny story. Never mind. Another time I'll tell you that story. So we always begin the way we structure this session is always up to now been the same. We have a guided meditation, about 10 minutes. Then we'll have a conversation on an issue. I'll present some ideas and Mr. Keogh will respond to them, and we'll do a little bit of back and forth. And we'll end with another short meditation. So that's the plan for today as well. I am getting over a cold. I was tested. I don't think it's COVID, but it came back negative. But it may mean that I end up needing to blow my nose or something during the session. So I apologize for that. I have my box of Kleenex right next to me. So with that, let's begin our meditation. I always put an image up on the screen in order to, if you don't want to close your eyes, feel free to let your eyes focus loosely on this image. And if you're comfortable, you might want to close your eyes. So either closing your eyes or loosening the focus. Bringing your attention inside. You might investigate, what does inside even mean? Bringing your attention to whatever it is you might be experiencing in the here and now. One teacher I've been doing an online retreat with lately and listening to his talks a lot suggests beginning with sound, bringing the attention to sound. So that doesn't mean reaching out and grabbing the sound and listening to it and trying to figure out what's being said and following up on the thoughts about it. Instead, it means just receiving the sound in a non-thinking sort of way, where you just hear something, it's present, maybe the loudness changes, it gets louder or softer, and at some point it ends. And then maybe you notice another sound, maybe a fan, maybe a clicking sound or a sound maybe of nature. But the point isn't to identify or recognize the sound, or to think about who it is that's making the sound or why the sound is happening or what the sound may mean. All of those things are extra that we add to this experience of hearing. we're trying to just have this experience of hearing, just letting the sound float into awareness, be present, and as it may, end. So that's quite different than the idea of listening, when we're trying to hear and interpret and analyze and respond. This is more receiving the sound. Just noticing that there are many sounds in the environment that we can receive. And ideally not react to. Just letting the auditory system of the body receive the sound. And then know that we are hearing. That hearing is happening. So try that for just a short while. Noticing all the different sounds that may be occurring. Noticing that some may be in one's own body. Some may be outside. And what's significant is not the sound, but the knowing of the sound. Knowing that you know, oh, this is the experience of sound. And then at some point, if you wish, you might instead switch attention to the experience of the breath, knowing that you are breathing. And once again, it's not about thinking about the breath. It's just knowing the breath. Knowing the experience of breathing in and breathing out. Another suggestion that can help maybe direct the attention is, as we're noticing breathing, to maybe put a little more attention on the exhale, on the out breath. The in-breath is a little bit more active. Often it's a little easier to notice the in-breath. Sometimes, for many of us, the out-breath is when we disconnect, when we lose our attention, we lose our mindfulness and connection to the breath. So putting a little extra attention on the out-breath, and maybe even particularly noticing the end of the out-breath. That it may be for you that at the end of the out-breath, there's just the tiniest pause before the next in-breath begins. And so sometimes putting attention or setting the intention to notice the end of the out-breath can help keep us continuously connected with the whole breathing process. Because it's relatively easy to stay with the in-breath. It's kind of interesting, energized. And then stay through the exhale. And then make a note of the end, that moment of ending before the next inhale begins. And what we're developing through these practices is a greater awareness of what's happening, a greater consciousness. Oh, this is what's going on now. And we're setting an intention to stay with a particular component of what's going on now. Because in any now, there is always lots going on. There will be sounds and perhaps thoughts and perhaps the breath and perhaps bodily sensations. And we're determining which of those we're going to place into our consciousness, receive in our consciousness. And what I'm suggesting is in this meditation, what you might place in consciousness, settle into consciousness, is either sounds or the end of each out-breath. That those are two options for what you want to bring into your awareness and stay with. So when breathing in, know you're breathing in. When breathing out, know that there's an exhale occurring. And if possible, note the end of that exhale and then the next inhale. And should the mind wander as it may, and you recognize that instead of bringing awareness to sound or the exhale, that there's thought and not much awareness, then just release that thought and find that inhale and exhale once again and reconnect to it. Don't make it a problem. Don't make it a success or a failure. Just know, oh, not where I intended to be. Come back. Come back to here and now. Just this breath. So I thought today I'd talk about a number of things, sort of hopefully all related to the meditation we just had. One was I thought I'd sort of begin with a follow-up to what we talked about last time, which was intention. That intention in our meditation is important. In our life is important. And so reviewing for yourself why you are learning to meditate, why you are interested in mindfulness, and what your expectations are. I think nowadays, especially perhaps because there is so much information out there about mindfulness and so many different teachers and so many different ways in which it's being presented, that people can get confused and think, I think, inaccurately or not helpfully, that our mindfulness is in order to have only certain sorts of experiences, to develop, to grow and change so that we only feel calm and kind and happy and generous and all of those sorts of wholesome, uplifting states. Now, those states are wonderful, and it is definitely the case, I would hope, that this practice may increase the number of those and how frequently those arise. But the practice is not to develop only a certain sort of experience. The practice is to help us relate to all experience, whatever is arising, in a particular way, in a way in which we relate to what may be present with some kindness, with some calm, with some clarity, with some patience. So it may well be, in fact, I'd probably guarantee it will be, that anger, grief, jealousy, irritation, guilt, judgment, all of those mind states that have caused us difficulty in the past will still arise. And to not feel that that's a failure, that those states arise. Instead, our mindfulness is helping us consider, how do we relate to them? And these are things that are hard to put into words because these aren't word experiences, these are felt experiences. But the issue is, do we pick it up? Do we go with it? Or do we just know it's present? Can we allow these things to arise in our heart and mind without getting on the train and following with them? Without feeding them is another way I like to think about it, without picking them up, whatever image is most useful for you. Hopefully this practice helps you begin to understand that there is a difference between things arising in the mind and the way we latch onto them. What we're learning to do is to allow them to arise, but not latch on, not pick up, not feed whatever image works best for you. And to begin to recognize there is that difference, that those are two different components of an experience. When we don't understand mindfulness, if we haven't been practicing in this way, these things happen so quickly that we think it's all the same. We think that's all there is. But in fact, it's not all this, it's not the same. This thing can arise and we don't need to become it, to pick it up, to feed it, to breathe it. Instead, we just know, oh, that's what's here. So it's learning to allow these things without joining them, without becoming friends with them, without joining the cult of them. So there's a story that maybe will be helpful, a little image story. So a couple of people walking along, meditators walking along, and they come upon this very large boulder. And one asks the other, he says, how heavy do you think that boulder is? And the second guy says, oh, that boulder is really, really heavy. And the first person says, no, not if you don't pick it up. Which is true, right? That it's only heavy when we pick it up. The boulder is there and it's just a boulder. If we pick it up, it becomes very heavy. So these mental states we have can be very much like that, that anger can be there. It's only heavy for us if we pick it up. So this not picking up, but knowing is what we're after. What we're developing is this ability to know without picking things up. We can know they're present, but we don't pick them up. So a very famous meditation teacher would often begin meditation sessions by using this phrase, which I hope might be useful to you. The past is a memory. The future is unknown. Now is the knowing. And now is what we're after. How can I know what's present now without joining into it, picking it up, feeding it, whatever image? So another way maybe to think about this that I've been becoming quite aware of is lately, so I have a weekly meditation group. I think you all know that, and we're doing it on Zoom. And this is a hard time for everyone, whether you are incarcerated or whether you are not incarcerated. That people are struggling with the sorts of constraints that are on them everywhere. And of course, with the death, 200,000 people have died. It's astounding, horrifying. So many people are in my weekly group, they talk about that they're having a hard time, that they're feeling no motivation, that they're feeling a little discouraged, depressed even. And what so many people say is that one of the ways they work with that, or they try to help themselves, is by going for walks or going out in nature. Now, I know that's something that is limited for you because you're incarcerated. However, it might be that you think back to before you were incarcerated and you remember that you used to use nature in that way as well, that maybe you did used to go to parks or go for a bike ride or go for a walk in order to kind of lift your spirits or to think things, to sort of settle your heart. And maybe even while you're incarcerated, maybe you lucky enough to be in a cell with a window, and maybe you have moments where you lie on your bunk and you can look out the window and you find that soothing or settling to watch the clouds. Or maybe even just when you're walking across, walking outside to get from one place to another in the prison, that just being outside, seeing the clouds, seeing the trees, hearing a bird, that you find is helpful. So I raise this because I think that that's true for so many people. And that the way we are in nature, or the way we are when we just go for a walk, that's knowing. That's what we're after. When we are out walking across the yard or looking out the window, we're not out there saying, oh, well, gee, that tree, it's really the wrong color. It really should be a little bit darker brown this time of year. Or the branches aren't moving quite right. Or I don't like the way that, that cloud is sort of a wrong shape. We don't go out and start thinking we're supposed to fix this or change this or have anything to do with it. We just experience it. We just take it in. We just know it. So that way of being in the world is sort of what we're trying to develop all the time, right? Can we go into a new setting and relate to it in the way we relate to things we don't think we can fix or change or alter, like nature? Can we just experience what's happening? That experience, if you can connect back either through memory or through times now when you've had that feeling of what it's like to just be with watching a cloud move through the sky, watching the leaves shake on a tree, just the calmingness of that willingness to just be. That's what knowing is. That's what we're aiming at when we talk about now is the knowing. So this is a subtle difference between knowing what's happening, both externally and internally, and quickly moving into thinking, fixing, analyzing, planning, all of that stuff that we do. And it's not to say that those are wrong. We need to do those too. But they often happen so quickly that we've never really taken into consciousness what's actually happening now. And it's that taking into consciousness initially and maybe pausing, resting with it, that gives us the information we need to then know whether there is a need for further thinking or fixing or planning or analyzing. Maybe there is, and then fine, but maybe there isn't. Like when we're in nature, there really isn't a need for any of that, so we don't have to add it. But oftentimes in our day-to-day life, there also isn't a need for any of that, and we don't have to add it. And when we don't add it, things are calmer. Life is easier, more pleasant, less agitated, less irritated. So maybe with that, I'll ask Mr. Keogh if he has some thoughts on this difference between knowing, taking in our experience in this knowing sort of way versus thinking, fixing, analyzing experience.
Well, I have a story.
Good.
And you may have heard it. I don't know. The story of the guys that were in the rowboat out on the river fishing, and they were anchored along a little outside the stream, but in the river. And they were doing their fishing. It's a beautiful day, and they see this boat coming downstream, and it's coming right at them. And they keep expecting it to change course, and it's not changing course. So this fisherman, who was very laid back, very relaxed, just enjoying the afternoon, is starting to get kind of irritated by this other boater. The boat's coming right at him, and he can't get his eyes off the boat. He's just following it. It's not changing. He keeps expecting it to change. It doesn't change. It's coming right at them. And he gets really angry, and he gets more upset, and he yells at the other boat. And then when it gets real close, they see that there's nobody in it, that it was just drifting freely. And what to do? Well, they pulled in the anchor a little bit, and they got out of the way. They moved themselves to avoid the drifting boat hitting them. And so that's the story, is that they jumped to a conclusion about what was going on with the other boat. They were thinking about it, and their thoughts led them in the direction where it ruined that part of their morning. they went from this easygoing state to very angry. And then as soon as they saw that there was nobody in the boat, there was nothing to be angry at anymore, the anger went away. Then they just took action. They moved out of its way. But it was the thought about it that got them into trouble. And of course, the moral of the story and what Ms. Shepard was saying is that this is not to say that you don't think, but paying attention to the difference between just observing what's happening and laying a story onto it is something that we all do this a lot. But our mindfulness practice helps us try to get a little bit better at separating out, this is what's happening, from this is what I think about what's happening. And I think that's the theme of the session today, is the more we can do this, the more we can kind of realize that I've got some thoughts about it, and my thoughts about it are not the same thing as it. And just kind of keeping this in the back of the mind can help, in situations with, I can imagine situations there in the institution where somebody does something and people misread what their intentions were. You build on, oh, he did this, that must mean X. Or maybe you've been in a situation where you do something innocently, but people take offense because they're reading in, they're thinking about what you did rather than just looking at what you did. And so that's something that can help us. If we can keep this in mind, can keep us out of trouble, can certainly reduce the aggravations. And of course, if our thinking is correct, then that's different. But whatever, the guys in the boat on the river, whatever their thinking was, didn't change the proper thing to do in response, which was to just move themselves out of the way of that boat. Like they didn't have to be angry. If there was a man in the boat and there was somebody to be angry at, would that have changed what they should have done? No, just get out of the way. So anyway, that's my little story. This thing of the other thing that Ms. Shepard began talking about was allowing things to happen. And sometimes things happen, and I'm thinking about emotions. So if something happens and I get angry at it, maybe it's not healthy at all for me to try to choke down the anger, pretend that I'm not angry. Or if something bad happens, some loss, some bad loss maybe, and I feel very bad about that. I'm grieving, I'm feeling, somebody close is in bad shape, and I'm grieving, I'm feeling the loss. That's a feeling. And I think that we have this kind of, sometimes this expectation that it's bad to feel grief. And we often say it's bad to feel anger. And I think that our message here is that it's not bad to feel these things, but to separate out the feeling. I can feel these things, but then what am I going to do after I start feeling this? And then this is the thing that Ms. Shepard was saying about, I can feed that feeling. I can keep it going, or else I can kind of just let it play itself out without encouraging it. And of course, we all have that experience with anger, where something happens that provokes anger. You can't not be angry when something happens. It's just automatic. But then, what's the typical thing? We rehearse again and again and again. This made me angry. We're holding on to whatever it is. It's like we've got this enjoyment of the anger. It's like, oh, he did this, and then later that night I'm rehearsing, oh, he did this, and make myself angry again, because there's a little bit of a charge, there's a little bit of a physical excitement about being angry. And so that's the difference between allowing the anger to happen and accepting it. Oh, I got angry. Maybe these guys in the boat said after this whole incident goes by, he says, I got angry. You know, he could not be angry. I mean, the anger just happened automatically because his thoughts led him in that direction. But, you know, maybe I shouldn't have thought that. But once I started thinking about that, the anger was automatic. But is it going on later in the day? He's kind of coming back. Oh, that guy should have, you know, whatever. You know, that guy shouldn't have done that. And he's feeding that anger. I'm trying to kind of make it more vivid. What Ms. Shepard was saying in general. It applies to anger. It applies to grief too. I think we should allow ourselves to feel grief. If we bottle it up, pretend that it's not there, constantly distract ourselves so that we're not thinking about it, that's not healthy. On the other hand, we don't want to feed it either. We don't want to kind of continually go back to, oh, how much I missed it. Oh, over and over and over again. There's a certain respect for the person. You don't want to ignore them. But on the other hand, a long time people can end up grieving for years, and that's like, no, you're latching on to that sensation and kind of making it worse for yourself. So anyway, couple thoughts
Thank you.
You said, Ms. Shepard.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Kia. Yeah, so what you were just talking about, I think, is bringing something. You know, we're not saying that we don't bring these things into consciousness. When anger arises, we become aware. Oh, this is anger. There is a feeling of anger. That's the phraseology I would encourage, rather than saying I'm angry. It's not that you are angry. It's that anger has arisen. Anger is present. It doesn't belong to you. It's not personal to you. It's not unique to you. It's just a feeling that human beings experience. So just to say, oh, there is a feeling of whatever, grief or anger or jealousy or irritation or whatever it may be, bringing that into consciousness is what our mindfulness helps us do. That's what we're talking about. We bring that into awareness. And then we go to the body. How does that express itself in the body? How did I even realize it was here? Oh, well, I realized it was here because my jaw tightened up or my chest clenched or there's a knot in my belly. Beginning to notice, what are those bodily signs that let us know that something has happened? So we bring the experience into our consciousness, that's the knowing, and then we connect it to the body. Well, what's happening in the body? What we're not doing is jumping to thinking, fixing, changing, investigating, analyzing. Because in fact, those are all the ways we try to hold these things we try to get away from them. We try to escape them. And this practice is encouraging us to say, no, we can deal with these things. It's okay. This is what human bodies and minds and hearts do. It's like, you know, there is rain. There is a feeling of whatever, a feeling of irritation, a feeling of judgment, a feeling of loss. That this is that feeling. Here it is. This is how it feels. Oh, that makes it bearable. That makes it just another feeling, just like just another cloud passing over the sun or this in the sky. It's just the way of nature. These things arise and they cease. And getting some ways in which we can remember that with phrases like now is the knowing, or this is a feeling of X, and then connecting it into the body and then just resting there. Because with that patience and resting, it'll change. Soon there'll be another feeling. And if we're mindful and attentive, we'll notice as that one arises, oh, now this is a feeling of curiosity about what's happening next, or of interest in what's happening in my body. There's a new feeling. And that's what we're aiming at. So this applies externally, as Mr. Keogh was talking about, but it's an especially useful strategy internally, because when we're meditating and these feelings arise, they can absolutely hijack our meditation, get us totally pulled away out of here and now. So in the meditation, the boat image is when we see a memory arise that we know is a trigger for us. We can see, oh, there's that trigger. Bring it into consciousness. Here comes that fear story. And then go into the body. Where does that fear story express itself in the body? Or maybe it's a bodily sensation first. Maybe there's a pain in the body. And that triggers. But we want to interrupt the trigger and the response by just becoming conscious, bringing into consciousness these things that arise for all human beings. Some are pleasant, some are unpleasant, and not think there's anything wrong with having unpleasant memories or feelings or thoughts, but also knowing we don't need to pick them up, feed them, carry them along, react to them. We can let them move through, because they will on their own if we don't clutch onto them, either in fear that they're going to hang around or trying to hold on to them. It's fundamentally, as you've heard many times, it's about clinging to what happens or pushing away what happens. This knowing is the process of allowing what happens. And allowing, one of the ways we can learn to do that is through attending to the body. So just remembering during your meditation, maybe even beginning your meditation, the past is a memory. The future is unknown, unknowable. Now is the knowing. Can I connect to the knowing right now? And not jump into feeding, picking up, just letting the knowing change. So let's end with another short guided meditation. Let me remind people as well that we are happy to get comments or feedback from any of you. Just send something to whoever manages this for you, your chaplain or maybe psychological services, whoever it may be, and they can forward it to us so that then we could speak directly to that in the next recording we make. But let's do another meditation, Mr. Keel.
Okay, so like Ms. Shepherd just said, the meditation is practice in paying attention, just knowing, without being carried away with what we sense. And we say, be in the present moment, be here and now. And we start with the bell and just listen to the bell, the hearing meditation that we practiced earlier. And, you know, the bell may or may not be pretty coming through this recording, but pay attention to what it is, whether it's pretty or not. And just be with whatever you hear, be whatever you're feeling. The sounds that are out there, the physical sensations in your body are kind of like the boat drifting down on the river, and you're separate from it. You're watching this boat drifting down. Watch the way you hear things. Watch the feelings in your body. If you're sitting with some pain, don't be carried away with the pain. Just notice that it's there and move on to watch other things in your body. What else do you feel? the weight on your chair, or if you're standing, the weight on the floor through your feet. Or notice your breathing. Again, not the thought of breathing, but the feeling of breathing. Cool air coming in your nose. So you are there watching the sensation, or feeling the sensation of the cool air coming in. And this is all practice. We're getting better at separating the person who's aware from the person who's feeling it, from the thing that's out there. You're aware of the thing that's out there. Separation. So maybe take a few deep breaths just to make it more vivid that you're feeling these things. And you might notice that your mind is jumping around and you've got some thought patterns, something you've heard or something else going on in the room, distracting. This always happens. It's not anything that's unusual. This is not a game where we have to glue our attention onto one thing, but it's much more creating this separation, the sense that I am here and I am noticing these other things. I'm noticing my breathing. I'm noticing the way my body feels. I'm noticing the sounds in the room, but I'm very present within myself. There's a separation. If I'm in a canoe and there's something coming down, I'm not jumping into the other boat. I'm staying in my own boat, watching the other boat. Just practice this for a little bit as your mind is jumping around. If it gets too far, come back to the breath. The breath is a nice place to come back to because there's always a little motion there. You can be a little curious about how it feels. We think we're sitting still, but we're always moving with our breath. We're always alive. And everything outside of ourselves is out there, and we're in here. And our thoughts are also just passing downstream, down the river. The thoughts come and go. When we notice that, whoops, we've drifted far away, we're not even in the same day, we're at some other day, come back to what it feels like to be sitting here, sitting and breathing, being relaxed. Being a little curious. Can I feel the breath down in my belly? Is my belly moving? Is my chest moving? Noticing that there's peacefulness that happens automatically if I can just stay with myself, just allow myself to breathe without being distracted by thought patterns of the past or anxieties about the future. It's not easy to do. It only happens a little bit. But the more that it happens, the more we see, oh, there's peacefulness within. Whatever's happened in the past, whatever worries there might be, fears, anxieties, right now, I'm okay. We might notice that we're holding some unnecessary tension. Are the shoulders holding some tension? You could let the shoulders just relax. Let them slump down. Release those shoulder muscles. Release the jaw muscles. Is your jaw tight? Just let your breathing be natural, whatever that is. Notice that pause at the end of the exhalation where there's actually no movement for an instant. Just explore the physical sensations without doing a lot of thinking about them, just noticing them. If that's hard to do, don't worry about it. It gets easier with practice. Just do whatever is easy and natural for yourself right now. And if there's some noise in the room, some distraction, or you distract yourself with a thought, don't get all upset and bothered by it. Or if you notice you're getting upset and bothered, just come back to the breath, come back to the body. Treat those things just like boats coming down the river. They're just things out there. When I talk, just use my voice as a reminder to be paying attention to your body, to your feelings. Come back if your mind has drifted away. Some people might experience that it's a little scary to be alone with their thoughts, but we're not really thinking now. We're just noticing that we're thinking and coming back to the body, coming back to the breath, coming back to wherever it feels safe. So I'll end this in about 30 seconds and let this last half minute, this last few breaths, just double down on paying attention to the way it feels to be sitting here. Just for a few more seconds, and then I'll ring the bell. Okay, here we are. So you don't need a bell to do this, but we do encourage you to meditate like this. It was about 10 minutes each time we did it today. Um, the more you do this, the more practical benefit it is in the rest of your life. So with that, I'll turn it back to Ms. Shepherd.
Thank you, Mr. Keel. So I think that's the end of our session for today. We hope that in the coming weeks you will continue to practice, and that this practice will be of great benefit to you. And in its benefit to you, you will be of benefit to others. So take care. I hope you all stay safe and healthy. Mr. Keo, any other last thought?
My last thought is usually take care of yourself and stick with it. And remember that you can handle it. Whatever comes your way, you can handle it. You've handled everything so far. So be well.
Yes. And the best way to handle it is by just bringing it into consciousness, knowing. And then you've got the power to decide, just as Mr. Keo said, that that boat's coming towards you. Doesn't matter who's doing or what's doing in that boat. What we need to know is what's the appropriate response for my boat. So I hope your boat gets a nice, even, smooth stream to float on for the next couple of weeks. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.